1748. French Jesuit missionaries had just relocated from Île-aux-Blancs across the Detroit River to a strategically significant piece of land, one exploiting the fertile farmland and the unique geographic relationship between the United States to the north and New France to the south.
What are you doing?
It's the, introduction.
The University of Windsor started in 1963. You're over 200 years too early.
But it needs context, an homage to the storied history of the school, if you will.
Yeah, I understand that, but we have 5 minutes. You're gonna have to pick up the pace.
5 minutes total? Well, all right, let's get this going. The 60s were a time of social change and unrest.
What about Assumption? I think you should start with Assumption.
Sure. Assumption Church was founded in 1845. It stands today as the oldest Canadian Catholic church west of Montreal. Assumption College was founded 10 years later, addressing the needs of a now growing population in the village of Windsor. Over the following century, what started with 26 boarders and 60 day students grew to a scale of over 1,000 students, all while the institution survived the Great Depression and 2 world wars. The population in the region continued to grow, and there came a time when a new educational institution was needed. July 1st, 1963. The peaceful serenity of the Assumption campus was interrupted ever so slightly by a ceremony marking the birth of the University of Windsor, a non-denominational public institution, the first autonomous degree-granting institution in southwestern Ontario. From that day forward, things moved fast on the University of Windsor campus, very fast. It was founded on the principles of ensuring an exceptional student experience, celebrating research, and recruiting the best faculty and staff, all while maintaining a commitment to the community. Lofty goals, to be sure, but a necessity at a time of change. The 60s were a radical departure from the conservative 50s. The Beatles were atop the charts, space travel was becoming a reality, and political unrest gripped the nation. And the University of Windsor had a front row seat. But first things first. Between needing homes for new programs and homes for new students, construction and development were the landscape of the day. Engineering, law, physical education, biology, all in spanking new buildings. Even a building for the fine arts. That was once a grocery store. That was a bowling alley before that. And the students had a home away from home as well, keeping the genders separated, of course. It took no time for the university to get to the forefront of post-secondary education. The Reverend Eugene LaBelle was the first president and vice chancellor of the University of Windsor, and he oversaw a period of vibrant growth. Faculty were becoming known throughout the academic universe, and the first class of University of Windsor graduates included many future stars. John Francis Letty, a Rhodes Scholar, was next up to helm the university, and he made such an impact, the library was named after him. With all this going on, you would have thought athletics would have been left behind. But think again. The newly minted Lancers were national contenders in a number of sports. The basketball team alone won 5 national titles in the 60s. And the Lance student newspaper was there from day one, not just following sports, but all the issues of the day, in a manner that reflected their name, a weapon with a sharp point. And then came the 70s, the oil crisis, women's liberation, Canada went metric, and speaking of measuring up, streaking was all the rage. Beanbag chairs, bell-bottoms, and disco were the style of the day. On campus, substance-over style reigned king. The Letty Library brought its holdings up to 1 million items and became one of the first in Canada to install a computer system. Math and media shared a new facility. Issues of the day continued to be the focus of many student and faculty. The proliferation of nuclear arms was of particular concern. And on the lighter side, there was the occasional prank like the time the students managed to get the dean's car into the lobby of the law building. But it was a time of growth. Enrollment was up over 500%, and the university's message was spreading far and wide. The U was now a destination for scholars from around the world. In the 70s, both Joyce Carol Oates and W.O. Mitchell were writers in residence. Hey, even Ike and Tina Turner popped in for a visit. The 80s marked the end of the Cold War. Personal computers gave life to the internet. MTV actually played music videos, mostly Madonna. The space shuttle disaster humbled us, and the end of apartheid unified us. The University of Windsor was a microcosm of the world around it. We lost some old buildings to make way for new, The St. Denis Center became the new home to human kinetics. Computer labs began popping up. They may have been off-white and ugly, but they were a certain indication of the cutting edge. A growing interest in energy efficiency triggered automotive research and solar experimentation. In 1981, the Great Lakes Institute for Environmental Research was created, the first and only of its kind. In 1983, CJAM began broadcasting their unique brand of radio, a voice of the students for the students. In 1984, Dr. Ron Ianni succeeded Mervyn Frankel to become the university's fourth president. Under his leadership, enrollment continued to grow. Per capita, the university had more foreign students than any other Canadian university. He was, unfortunately, unable to put a stop to the pranks. Grunge, video games, The Simpsons, both OJ and Bart, they were just the surface of the 90s. At its depth, the decade started with the release of Nelson Mandela. NAFTA was passed, and Quebec remained a vital part of Canada, just barely. On campus, the World Wide Web began to take hold, a reminder to everyone that the internet was born to serve higher education. Turtle Island, the Aboriginal Education Center, opened its doors in 1992. The following year, the CAW Center was built as a reminder that the campus landscape has many authors. The Odette School of Business was next, and it arrived with much harumph and handshaking. 1996 marked the birth of the University of Windsor Chrysler Automotive Research and Development Center. And recycling became the norm on campus, staying ahead of the curve as usual, which was literally where the university's track team was, becoming a national force. Dr. Ross Paul started his tenure in 1998. Just in time to read Professor Alistair MacLeod's masterpiece, No Great Mischief. At the end of the decade, off campus, the question of the day was simple. Will my computer work in the year 2000? On campus, the ideals of social justice were becoming a guiding force. It was a new millennium. Things changed. The war in Iraq followed. But the decade had its positive moments too. Many of them on the campus of the University of Windsor. Enrollment reached an all-time high in 2003 on the back of the double cohort. The university was now home to students from over 70 countries. There was now 190 undergraduate programs, 65 graduate programs, and 6 professional programs. Alumni continued their generous commitment to the university with the addition of both Alumni Hall and Alumni Field. The endowment fund went from $20 million to $60 million. On top of that, the 2000s brought in the Jackman Dramatic Arts Center and the Anthony P. Toldo Health Education Center. But in the decade that brought us the iPod, the iPhone, Twitter, and Facebook, one of the biggest stories on the University of Windsor's campus was the arrival of the Schulich School of Medicine and Dentistry. The global economic downturn, the largest since the Great Depression, hit hard in 2008. But the end of the decade ushered in a sense of hope. The 6th president, Dr. Alan Wilderman, arrived and brought with him an interest in expanding the university's horizons, both literally and figuratively. The 2010s, the teens, you know, from 2010 until today, that period. Anyway, it's been pretty exciting on and off campus. Globally, WikiLeaks and the NSA remind us that Orwell wasn't that far off, and Gangnam Style reminded us that there will always be one-hit wonders. On campus, the past 3 years have been very productive, to say the least. The Windsor Lancers women's basketball team have claimed 3 straight CIS national titles. 2 former Lancers represented Canada at the Olympics, with Tessa Virtue bringing home the gold. At the spring convocation of 2011, the University of Windsor conferred a degree on its 100,000th graduate. 2012 marked the opening of the Ed Lumley Center for Engineering Innovation, a 300,000 square foot state-of-the-art home for the Faculty of Engineering. And speaking of technology, the campus is now completely wired and wireless. There's even an app. And if you look closely, you'll see there's a new brand as well, one that pays tribute to the university's celebrated past and looks forward to its continued transformation. But before we get ahead of ourselves, let's consider what has actually occurred over the past 50 years. Over 100,000 young men and women, now alumni, have entrusted the University of Windsor, the staff, the faculty, to enrich their minds. And while they were on campus, those students' sense of curiosity led to discovery and enlightenment, and the adventure along the way was etched in their memories as some of the greatest days of their lives. But it's their accomplishments in the days and years after they depart That impact upon the world around us by University of Windsor alumni, that is the true measure of the past 50 years. And by anyone's account, it's been an extraordinary achievement. But now is not the time to rest. There is so much more to discover, to achieve. In the next few years, the University of Windsor will add a downtown campus, celebrate their 100th convocation, and their 115,000th graduate. In doing so, they will continue their 50-year tradition of providing an exceptional student experience, of recruiting the finest faculty and staff, of celebrating research, of promoting international engagement, and of course, engaging in meaningful community partnerships. Well, there you have it, 50 years in 5 minutes.
Yeah, that was actually closer to 10 minutes, but it was really good.